nothing to do with this. What are some of the things that really frustrate you? I'm going to sort of just jump in and make it rhetorical and tell you. One of the things that really frustrate me is interruptions. Just being interrupted in your day, especially if you're really busy with something. You've planned something, you're going for it, and then there's some form of interruption. I'm not talking about you're just faffing through life and there's an interruption, but when you really focus on something and there's you're being called away. I battled to get through some stuff like that. Recently, I think it was this week, probably within the last 10 days, they just celebrated or pointed out the fact that it was now, Chris Barnard, the famous heart surgeon, would have now, on that day, been 100 years old. And I just thought, imagine halfway through this op, somebody came and said, "Your mum's on the phone." Just imagine, I'm doing something really important here. Surely that can wait. Okay. It is relevant. We'll get to it in a moment. Okay, we're going back to Nehemiah. And we saw that everyone was building the wall, rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. This is after the first exile. And now they're rebuilding the wall. And it says that each of them actually built the section or rebuilt the section in front of their own house. And that caused great unity and great camaraderie. And so it talks about taking ownership, taking responsibility for their own, in a sense. And for us, just to make it applicable again, taking ownership of our own households, our own marriages, our own children, taking responsibility for our finances, our spiritual, emotional, physical well-being, taking responsibility for our own. And then speaking life. Last week we stopped there about speaking God's life, not stumbling over the loose stones. You'll remember that Sanballat said, "Can these stones live?" Very arrogantly. "Can these stones come back to life again?" And we spoke about bringing those stones back to life by identifying them, naming this in my life. This is the stones that are causing me to stumble and fall over. This is the stuff going on. Naming them, picking them up, building them back into your wall. So organizing your life, organize your time, prioritize, stop procrastinating, stop blaming others. If you're stuck in something, get unstuck. If you need help to get unstuck, get the help that you need. Start again, as I said, by recognizing, naming, and picking it up, building that back into the wall. And also teeth in with your neighbor. I still think it's amazing how nowadays we don't really know our neighbors, our physical neighbors. The other morning I was going for a walk, and it's quite interesting how people run past you and so on. And the one lady came running past, and she did a different route. And then, as I was kind of coming around the corner towards our place, she ran from the other side, and then it was almost awkward because I kind of slowed down and stopped because I was getting to my gate, and she didn't want to slow down in case I was a weirdy. And then she kind of ran past and came back, and then stopped. And turned out to be my neighbor. I said, "Okay, hello, I'm your neighbor." I still don't even know her name, but that's the weird world we live in. So teeth in with your neighbors. That's the point. In building this wall, they actually had to teeth in. It would make no sense. Sometimes, you drive through a neighborhood and there's this house with this massive wall in front of it. And next door, they've got these 4-foot vibacretes and nothing on the side. And you think, somehow I don't get this. It doesn't really function that well. In any event, just touching on the different guys operating and rebuilding. You'll remember the goldsmiths and the perfume makers. Somehow they didn't wait for the stonemasons to arrive. This is, picking up our lives and putting it back together isn't something that we wait for the professionals to arrive. By the way, if you read through that whole section, in fact, if you read through the entire book of Nehemiah, it doesn't mention one stonemason. It mentions everything else from, as I said, goldsmith to perfume makers to normal residents to, what was the other one, merchants, etc. So there weren't seemingly any professionals around to come and do the work for them. Maybe God planned it that way, so it can be all of us taking responsibility for our own. So moving on, as they all got stuck in, as they all got building, both the mood and the circumstances changed very quickly, very dramatically, very positively. Something happened and everyone was focused on this one thing that they were doing. And then there was a twist in the tail. Then suddenly opposition arose. And one can expect opposition to start mounting against them. It actually mentions ridicule and mocking, etc. And it should be expected because we have the old saying, the tallest trees catch the most wind. In Afrikaans, leebblikke maak die reus geraas. Nee, regtig nie. The other way around. It's actually, I'll come back to the leebblikke, Sanballat and the other guys. So, Nehemiah 4, 7-8. Nehemiah, at some stage, expected to get some opposition, to get some wind from the front. So it says, but notice that I think he expected opposition from the outside. It says, when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Amorites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs of Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. And they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to stir up trouble for us. Then jumping ahead, because there's a lot of opposition taking place, jumping ahead into chapter 6, we read that when word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I'd rebuilt the wall now, and there wasn't a gap left in it, though up to that time I hadn't set in the doors into place, Sanballat and Geshem came to me and they sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plains of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent them this message. I sent them this reply. I'm going to stick to the notes. I'm carrying on a great project and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave to come down to you? And then it says, 4 times over they sent me the same message. And 4 times over I sent them the same answer. I love that. 4 times over. You know, if you imagine this, just imagine it again. And somebody, you fixing someone's heart here. Jou ma's before, maak hom wag. Eventually, 4 times over. By the 4th time, you're going to think that surely this is really urgent. By the 3rd time, you're starting to wonder. By the 4th time, you think, let's just sort this out, get this behind me, and get on with what I'm called to. Not this guy. 4 times, I just sent them the same answer and kept on going. He was called, he was focused, he was determined not to be intimidated, not to be distracted, not by others, nor by circumstances. So I'm just wondering sometimes, how quickly are we influenced? How quickly are we influenced by what others are saying, what they are doing, sometimes by their seeming success? Influences us, they seem to be getting ahead. I'm not getting ahead. And, sometimes it doesn't really get to us if it's out there, if it's far off. The further off, the better, in a sense. The distractions out there, done and gone, doesn't quite get to us as much. I mean, most of us did not lie awake last night because of the war in Russia, Ukraine. You didn't quite, big fellas die. The further it is, the easier it is to forget it. But as soon as it becomes closer. So if you get you get some nasties from a peripheral friend on Facebook. The guy that sat opposite you at your brother's wedding that somehow befriended you, and now he's saying something, you don't really care. But when it comes from inside, from the familiar, then it's not that much fun. Then it bites and it stings. But this was from the outside. And so now we read that outside opposition came 4 times over, and 4 times over I gave them the same answer. But then if you keep reading, in Nehemiah, in chapter 4, verse 12, there's something that kind of shook me. Look at that. It says, then the Jews who lived near came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, you will be attacked. And it's bad enough when the enemy is against us, when you're facing some fire, but when that which is inside, when the familiar comes up against you 10 times over, never mind 4 times over, 10 times over, it's poison. I just thought about this and thought, this isn't unique to poor Nehemiah. This is kind of par for the course when you read the Bible. Par for the course. Sorry, I'm drifting slightly. I won't go there. Okay, it's a very quick one. This week, a bucky drove past me, and it had its logo and its slogan on, and it said, above par. And I thought, if you know anything about golf, that's not good. But it's fine. Because if you put there below par, then everybody thinks you really suck. But just stay away from sporting quotes if you don't know what's going on. It's irrelevant. Sorry. I'm back to, Tim was distracting this morning. Okay, no, he wasn't. It's never distracting. Never, ever. So I'm back to leadership in the Bible. Moses. I mean, I really, before you're in leadership, you have some idea. Moses is the guy in the Bible, and and so on. That's the guy. But when you're into leadership and you read some of these stories, you really think, my goodness, this is not for sissies. So even before they leave Egypt, they're still there. Exodus 5:21. It says, they open with this great welcoming. May the Lord look upon you and judge you. Because you, Moses, you have made us a stench in Pharaoh and the officials' eyes, and you have put a sword in their hands to kill us. Just what every leader wants to hear. May the Lord look upon you and judge you. Okay. That's while they're still in Egypt. That's before they've done anything. Then, these same people see and experience see the Egyptians experiencing the 10 plagues. It doesn't touch them. They experience them experiencing the 10 plagues. I mean, it's one thing if the frogs are over there and the mosquitoes over there and all that's over there. That's understandable. One of the amazing ones is the plague of darkness, where it says darkness that can be felt. And then he said, but yet in Geshem, where the Israelites were, they had light. But the Egyptians could not see nor experience the light. How incredible is that? Anyway, so these guys, these same Israelites that experienced or saw the 10 plagues, the ones that got into that triangle of death, as they were led through, they were faced by the desert, the Red Sea, and the oncoming army, this samosa of death, and yet they experienced the Red Sea being opened before them and God closing it on their enemies. They experienced this. And so what happens next? They said, this is Exodus chapter 16, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only you have left us to die by the Lord's hand in Egypt. Because there we sat around pots of meat and ate all other good food that we wanted. But now you've brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly. Which is interesting, because they said, if only you left us there to die. If only we died there. Now they're moaning about dying here. So it's all about the place of death. Never mind. The point is, they were grumbling, if only we could go back to the land of slavery. And then we continue, it's the last one with Moses. These things must have affected him. But then if you jump to Numbers, chapter 12, verse 1 to 2, this, I think, is the deepest cut. Because this one comes from the familia. It actually says, it comes from Miriam and Aaron. In case you're not too sure about your Bible, these are the biological siblings of Moses. This is Buti and Sisidi. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. And you can read the rest of the story for yourself. It doesn't end well. God is gracious, and it does end well-ish. But let's just put it that way. The Lord wasn't impressed. But here we have, again, just the point I'm making, rumors out there, opposition from out there, even opposition from within the community. But then when it's the familiar, then it really cuts. And so not only did Nehemiah face opposition and ridicule from out there, from Sanballat and the other guys, but now he was facing it from within the camp, from within the exiles. It says 10 times over. Now, I know, and please listen carefully, because don't hear what I'm not saying. As elders, we understand that at the moment we also kind of parallel speaking, teaching, telling about the building project that we're about to embark on. And we understand that there are some unanswered questions there about the proposed move, about the building project that we face. We understand that it's really uncomfortable and unnerving not having all the answers, especially about our own new venue. Our auditorium. What would that look like? What would the size be? What would the look and feel be? Would it be one of those slopey ones? Will they go all modern on us with strip lights? I mean, lights that run in strips. That's what I mean. Just smoke machines and things. But I'm not all that sure. So we understand. We understand that some may feel, but I don't even have children in Grace Hill. I don't even have grandchildren in Grace Hill. Why should I be bothered about this? And then we start mentioning the figures, the amounts, and you think, oh. And then we say, these amounts are so big that, we can't do it as a people. Only God. It's only when we trust God, and that sounds like another reason to take a step back. Into a dream block myself. Because if only God can do this, that means I'm off the hook. And so, if we take this to the nth level, then it can almost cause us to kind of step back. There's no malice, there's no hardness of heart, but there's sometimes a lack of information and a lack of understanding. And when we're at that place of a lack of understanding information, it often brings about a lack of buy-in, a lack of commitment. And we can almost dissociate ourselves from the vision and from where we're going completely. And it's like, that's great, that's good for you. I'll kind of maybe come along, maybe not. We'll see how all of this pans out. Now, these are some of the dangers that opposition can cause, the opposition that we face. But throughout the Bible, God calls us and calls His leaders to faith and courage and action. Jumping right back to Genesis, when He called Abram. This is quite a vague call, I must say. The call of Abram, Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. It says, leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land that I will show you. That's not quite that specific. I would have also preferred to know a little bit more about what I'm going to be facing there. And yet today, Abram is called the father of the Christian faith. In fact, even God is referred to as the God of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. That's quite something. That God would be referred to, the God of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And so as leaders, we understand and we welcome that you have questions. And we'd love to hear those questions and some helpful comments and contributions and inputs on this exciting journey. And we will also be much more intentional about sharing some of the information. And just to be clear, we're not trying to keep information from you. It's just at the moment a very lengthy, tedious process. Sometimes it's just waiting for the next answer. And that waiting can be 2 months. But we will definitely step up the information because I think that was lacking from our side or easily. But what we don't need is friendly fire, opposition and murmuring and dissent and division, 10 times over, as it actually says. Please realize that I don't think for 1 minute that we are there. I don't think that we are there for one moment, that there's murmuring and opposition, and I'm not saying we're there. I'm not even thinking that we're there. But, part of good leadership is to point out the dangers before they arise, and so that we can prepare ourselves. And so I want to ask today that we would commit ourselves to never be part of the murmuring and the grumblings and the 10 times over from within the familia. So moving on, as Nehemiah became aware of the threats, whether they were the outside threat or the inside murmurings, he addressed them and he focused on each aspect. In verse 13 it says, I stationed some people below or behind the lowest points of the wall and the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords and spears and bows. So doing something practical about the issue. And so he identified the most vulnerable areas and protected them. And as I just mentioned, maybe for us to identify some of our own low places in the wall could be, for instance, a lack of information, a lack of understanding. For example, we are not building a school. That's not the vision. The vision is not, let's build a school. Yes, there will be buildings, and we will be building buildings that will be functioning as a school, but that's not the vision. It's actually about reaching a community. It's about reaching a city and generations, including through the medium of education. But it's much more than education. It's actually rebuilding a new kingdom environment in which a whole new generation and generations from now can grow up and flourish in. It's about building and creating a new kingdom environment in which future generations can grow up and flourish in. Because sometimes we need to just wake up and smell the coffee or the roses or whatever you want to call it. But there's stuff happening out there aimed at our children and our next generations, and it's stuff that we never ever had to face. And we need to create an environment, not go all Amish and build a wall around ourselves and block ourselves off from the rest of the world, but actually create an environment where we can make kingdom decisions and raise up children who grow up in an environment where kingdom decisions is the norm and not just the exception. Yet also strengthen them to be able to stand when their decision has to be the exception. It's much more than simply building a venue. So recently, I ended one of our sermons by asking, what else in this world, what else in your life are you involved in that will still be standing 50 years or 100 years from now, preaching the gospel, influencing the next generation for the kingdom? What else? So furthermore, it says, he armed the workers. I didn't even put the verse there. But he armed the workers. It's so well known. The one thing we know about Nehemiah is that he did this move where he had half of them armed and the other half were building. And then he had them spear in one hand, trowel in the other hand. I'm not too sure how that works. In any event, so it's kind of a 50-50 deal that went on. And it speaks of a dual purpose. And we know that we as a local body are called, in a sense, to a dual purpose. In fact, not only as a local body, all Christians are called to serving God and loving people. That's the great command. Love the Lord, love your neighbor. We've put it in different terms. We said, sons of heaven, fathers on the earth. Sons of heaven, fathers and mothers on the earth. So there's an outworking of what we're doing and what we are called to. And he reminded them of the value of what they were busy with. He reminded them of the greater, better future. And he reminded them that the Lord himself was with them. And so in time to come, I am getting really excited about next year. It sounds terrible to be talking about next year, but it's almost upon us. As a year of equipping and releasing. Just for example, Stuart came up earlier, and he just decided out of his own to get together a group of friends. I think you were about 8. And for the last 6 weeks or so, he got some mates around him, I don't think any of them from the body, mostly surfing mates, etc., and work connections and so on. And he did an identity course with them, something that we did together. And a couple of years ago, we went to Jeffreys Bay, I think 9 years ago, we did a men's camp with him, something on identity. And this just sparked him 9 years later, to do something similar with a couple of mates. Just being equipped, using what you've been equipped with, but then just getting on with it. You don't have to formally be anointed and released and rah-rahed off into the sunset. Just got on with it on a Tuesday night at home with a group of friends, and it changed lives. And so I'm saying, so I have a sensing that there will be a lot of equipping taking place next year. And it might be equipping outside of these walls, but that you will be equipped to do what you are called to in order to live this dual calling of loving God, but also to be a son and a father of God on the earth. I want to ask Merva to quickly come up. Can you pass Merva a mic there? Just seeing Kai there. Kai works and spends a lot of time on the outskirts of our, why don't you someone grab that mic, outside of our country. And so he's often in places like Rwanda and other countries. So somehow God has a plan with that. Somehow God can use that to open doors so that we can get in there with the kingdom, because he's more than welcome there. Just think of what I'm trying to say is, let's think of what has God equipped us with to become sons of heaven and fathers on the earth. It's the old question, what do you have in your hand? God asked Moses. God asked the widow, what do you have in your house? I've got nothing there except for a little bit of oil. So let's use that. Let's go with that. Merva's done something to equip himself. And
a year and a bit ago, the elders asked us, Amora and I, to lead Soul, the care ministry. Now, what that ministry does was way out of our comfort zone, but after some contemplation and introspection, we decided to heed that call. So there was a call, there was a task, and the elders were asking us to follow their vision for that particular ministry, and we were obedient. We did that. And we took our place in the gap. We were willing. And from what happened from there is that God started dealing with me first, changing my heart, all the while equipping me with a servant heart. And so, very much like Nehemiah, he took me on a journey to strange and unknown places, new opportunities to minister, to restore and build in places that I never could have imagined. And while I've learned new skills along the way, I do what I do because God uses my willingness and he enables me through his Spirit. And so we do it. And we are amazed and in awe of our gracious Father who wants to use us, all of us, his body, to build the wall, to build the city, to restore hearts and families and people, to fulfill his vision. So I just want to encourage you today to inquire of the Lord, to listen for his voice, take those steps of obedience, and he'll give you more to do. He will equip you in the most incredible way. And for those who might find themselves in a season of dryness, where you're struggling to hear God's voice, what he's saying, just jump in. Join where he's busy right now. Join in. Tackle the task in front of you. You know, God wants our willing hearts. That's all he's asking. Thank you.
It's amazing that what Merva didn't mention is that he had to go for some courses. He had to take a week at a time out of his schedule to go and be equipped in order to function effectively in a community that he probably, as he said, wouldn't have seen himself in at all a year ago. And now he loves it. And he's making a huge impact there. Just quickly going on, Nehemiah 4:14, he said, after I looked things over, I stood up and I said to the nobles and the officials, do not be afraid of them. So he's aware of the outside rumblings, the inside rumblings, and now he comes up and he says, remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your homes. If we forget who God is, the great and awesome one, then we will also forget who we are and what we are called to a great and awesome future, worth being equipped for, worth being armed for, worth fighting for, a legacy worth leaving for future generations. And so, what we trust to do is to bring you to a place where, can you take me down? Where we feel that we are secure, we are informed, we are equipped, so that we can be, as they were, courageous to continue the work. It says in Nehemiah 4, verse 15, when all our enemies heard that we were aware of the plot against us and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his work. When the enemy realized that their strategy had fallen flat, that their threats of ridicule came to nothing, and when we were reminded of his goodness and his greatness, we returned to the wall. I love that. And so moreover, the very last verse, verse 23, Nehemiah kept leading by example. He actually says, day or night, neither myself or the nobles or even our guards around us did not take off our clothes or lay down our weapons. And so let us endeavor to see and to understand the bigger picture, the greater vision in every single aspect of life. Let's position ourselves again on the walls, and let us determine not to let opposition get the better of us, not to make us despondent, not to bring about defeat. I want to close in 30 seconds with 3 areas of opposition that I think I just want us to take note of. The first one is opposition to your faith, opposition to our faith, to our belief system, to our values, being put under pressure daily by becoming more, or pressure to become more politically correct and socially acceptable. Secondly, opposition to our unity and our vision, especially being more intentional about the next generation and future generations. When we as a body are called to build for the next generation, we cannot do that without the next generation. You cannot build for the next generation without building with them. And so we'll see more and more younger people and younger leaders coming through. The third one is opposition to your family unit. Pressure on your marriage, your time, your finances. Your children, your teens, your children and your teens especially are having to make harder choices every single day. So stand with them and be aware of opposition from within the familia.